Hello, this is Esther Uphamilewicz with Worship Now. Here's how. Today I'm going to teach you how to form an inversion. It's very important that you know how to form the major chords and minor chords, also called triads. And so I suggest that you first watch my video on major and minor triads on white keys. You can also watch the one on black keys, either one. It will show you the same things that you need to know before you would learn how to make an inversion. So the triad is called root position. So when we play our chords at the beginning, when we're first forming our triads, that is called root position. So if we start with a C chord, C, E, G, and we want to form the first inversion, all we have to do is move the bottom note up an octave. Okay, so up to the next C. So we had it on C, and now we're moving it up to the next C. That is called the first inversion. Then to make the second inversion, we're going to move, again, the new bottom note, which is E. We're going to move that up an octave, and now we have the second inversion. So again, the notes for the root position were in order C, E, G. For first inversion, it was E, G, C. And then for second inversion, it's G, C, E. So in that way, we have three chords that sound similar, but they're slightly different. However, they share all the same notes, so it's still a C chord, just in a different inversion or position, if you will. Another way to think of the inversion is the position of the chord. Now, if we were to move this G again up an octave, now we would have a C root position chord again. It's just played higher, but it's still considered a root position because C is the bottom note of that chord. So there you have your C major inversions. Now, when you're playing these on the keyboard, when you're using the right hand should use 1, 3, and 5 on the root position chord. 1, 2, and 5 on the first inversion chord. And then again, 1, 3, and 5 on the second inversion chord. So generally, we're going to use 1, 3, and 5 on chords, but on the first inversion for the right hand, we're going to use second finger in the middle, okay? And then for the left hand, it's similar. 5, 3, and 1 for the root position chord. 5, 3, and 1 again for the first inversion chord. But then when we get to the second inversion, the left hand is going to play 5, 2, and 1. And the reason for that is simply just because of the spaces between the keys and what's going to be most comfortable for the fingers. So a lot of people, when they're learning to play chord songs, tend to want to use 1, 2, 4. This is if you haven't had any prior classical training. I don't necessarily recommend that. I recommend using 1, 3, and 5 on your root position chords because you have to give that pinky some practice. It needs to get some strength because all of your fingers should be able to play the keys at any time. So also, if you only use the fourth finger and you don't use that finger, your hand position won't ever get into a correct hand shape. So we want the hand shape to be rounded and curved like this, okay? Like a letter C, okay? Then let's go ahead and go over all of the different triads and inversions. So I would consider the C chord to be part of group 1. That is, there's 3 chords that I would put in that category because they all are formed using white keys. So the other chords that fit in that category are F and G. So we have C, F, and G. Those triads or chords all have white keys. Those are the majors. So G major is G, B, D. And that's root position. We move the G up an octave. Then we have B, D, G. That's your first inversion. We move the B up an octave. And then we have our second inversion, D, G, B. And that's your G chord and inversions. On the F chord, we start with F, a third higher, a third higher. There, your root position triad is F, A, C. Move the F up an octave, and now we have our first inversion, A, C, F. Move the A up an octave, and then we have our second inversion, C, F, A. That completes group 1 inversions. Now we're going to do group 2 inversions. So these are also on the white keys. So the group 2 inversions all have one sharp or one black key in the middle, and those 3 keys are D, E, and A. So D, F sharp, and A. I'm putting this slightly to the side here so you can see which black key I'm talking about. Okay? So the D chord consists of D, F sharp, and A, and that's root position, moving the D up an octave. That gives us our first inversion, F sharp, A, D. Moving the F sharp up an octave, that gives us our second inversion, A, D, F sharp. Still, the same fingering is used. Even if you have a black key, you're going to still use the same fingerings that I mentioned at the beginning. And that is the D major inversions. E major is going to be formed exactly the same way. E, G sharp, and B. And now we're going to move the E up in an octave to do our first inversion chord, G sharp, B, E. Then we move that G sharp up an octave, and then we have B, E, G sharp for our second inversion of the E major chord. Also part of group 2 is the A major chord. A, C sharp, and E. That forms the A major root position chord, and if we move the A up an octave, we have C sharp, E, A, and that's our first inversion, and then we move the C sharp up an octave, and we have E, A, C sharp. And that is our A major inversions. Also included in the white keys on my video on major and minor chords on white keys was B major. Now B major does not fit into group 1 or group 2. It falls into another category, which is actually called group 4. So it is odd. There is nothing similar with this chord to any of the other chords. So it is just unique. So the B major triad has one white key and 2 black keys. So it can be very awkward to play this chord, especially in root position. So you need to slide your hand into the keys a little bit more. Don't stay at the back on the white keys. You have to come in onto the black keys a little bit more so that you can be able to reach those notes comfortably. So our root position triad is B, D sharp, F sharp. Then we move the B up an octave and we have D sharp, F sharp, B. And we move the D sharp up an octave and we have F sharp, B, D sharp. And that concludes the white key major inversions. Now, if you want to form the minor inversions on the white keys, it's going to be the same exact thing. So remember, the basic rule from going from a major triad to a minor triad is to lower the middle note 1/2 step. So if we follow our pattern that we learned in the major and minor 5-finger scales, whole, whole, half, whole. Now for the minors, it's whole, half, whole, whole. And that will change the middle note to be a 1/2 step lower. So on C, F, and G, which are our white key minors, group 1, okay, C, F, and G. Remember in the majors, we had all white keys. But in the minors now, if we lower that middle note from the E, we're going to go down to E flat, okay? Because it's going down a 1/2 step, it's called a flat. So those 3 keys, group 1, C minor, F minor, G minor, those are going to have one flat in the middle. So now we have C minor, C, E flat, G. And you can form, C, E flat, G. You can form the inversions the same way that we did with the majors. Okay. I'll just quickly review the minor triads. So group 1, C minor, F, A flat, and C. And G minor, G, B flat, and D. So that's the group 1 minor triads, and the inversions can be formed the same way as the major triads and inversions. Then for group 2, D, E, and A, that all had the 1 sharp in the middle. Now we're going to lower that sharp, so we're going to go down to a white key. So then we'll have D, F, and A, all white keys. So the D minor, the E minor, and the A minor triad all have just white keys. So D minor, D, F, A, E minor, E, G, B, and A minor, A, C, E. And again, you can form the inversions the same way. That is the group 2 minor triads. And lastly, our B minor triad. So just like the others, we're going to lower that middle note, B. The D sharp's going to become D natural, but we're going to keep the F sharp. So now we have 2 white keys, 1 black key for our B minor triad. And form the inversions the same way that we did with the majors, and you will have everything learned perfectly. I would suggest practicing these hands separately. They will come in use when you go to play your songs and you want to get from one chord to the next. Sometimes you're going to use them for the left hand, sometimes you're going to use them for the right hand, but it's not so often that you will use them hands together, unless you're playing some classical advanced pieces. So good luck on learning your inversions, and if you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you.